Saturday, July 25, 2015. This is Mercedes Diesel Guy, and this is my 1983 Mercedes 240 Diesel. I have been working on the car. Not this past week, but the previous week I was doing work on it. I got the new clutch in, and took care of a few other various items like reinstalling the starter and the clutch slave cylinder. And then I started work on the drive shaft. I finally did get the two pieces of the drive shaft separated. This here is the rear piece. I still need to replace this bearing and carrier. I finally have all the parts in hand to take care of that, so I'll be getting to that as soon as possible. And while I was waiting on parts for the drive shaft, I actually started on the brake system, which I'm going to continue with, and actually more or less finish up the hydraulics before I get back to the drive shaft. Now, long story short, when I bought this car 3.5 years ago, there was a blown metal brake line which actually rusted out and dumped the fluid. It was snaked right over the rear suspension subframe. So, a couple of years ago, I actually cut out the bad sectional line and patched in a new section, and it seemed to be working okay. So I really wasn't worried about it. But as I did more and more work on the car, I took a look at the existing brake lines, and yeah, they certainly were still solid, but in a lot of places the coating was starting to wear, and I could see some surface rust on the brake lines, and I thought to myself, I've put so much time and work into this car that I can spend a little extra time, a little extra money, and replace all the steel brake lines just for safety, because I didn't see any reason to skimp on that if I was doing basically everything else on the car. I don't consider brake lines a really hard job. It's not a big deal in terms of the labor involved. Yeah, you have to bend the line into shape and snake it into place, but once again, I don't consider that to be a very big deal. This morning, I literally went around the corner to the auto parts store and gave them a list of what I needed, and here's my new brake lines. So, I'm going to get to installing them now. I may or may not get this done today. So I'm going to get to work now, and I will update you at the end of the day with the work I did. Okay, I'm at my stopping point for the day, and I have most of the brake line in the car replaced. Now, I will be replacing the master cylinder, so these aren't tightened down all that much. I just kind of tightened them in place as I was shaping the lines, mostly because I knew they had to start here, and I didn't want to, I wanted the line to be in as close to the original position as possible while I was routing them. This here, like I said, this is the connection to the driver's side front wheel, and you can see down here I have it connected to the new rubber line. The rubber line is not connected tightly. It's really just hand tight to keep everything in place for now, mostly because I'm going to have to tighten this into the new caliper first before I actually tighten it up there. And this line here, this actually goes to both of the rear brakes. This I ended up doing in a few sections, mostly because I couldn't find a piece of brake line quite long enough. Also, with the bends here at the front going around the firewall, it was actually easier to work with a shorter section to get this started. I used a section of 30-inch line, which I bent to match the piece that came out. And I'll get under the car and show you that in a moment. Now on the other side here is, and you can't see it around the reservoir, but there's another line which goes all the way out to the passenger front wheel. I haven't done that yet. I'll probably be getting to that tomorrow. Now under the car you can see where the 30-inch line meets up with this piece here. This is a piece of 60-inch. Ideally, I would have gone with 72-inch on this piece, but I couldn't get it locally at the store, so it was a... So this is actually a piece of 60-inch. And I have refastened the lines to the body. And because I was missing the clamp, I actually had to make a new clamp here. This is really just a piece of rubber hose, a plastic bracket off of I don't even know what, and a sheet metal screw. So, and there were sheet metal screws that originally went into the body. So you can see here the 60-inch piece goes through this connector to this piece right here. So, like I said, I did this one line in a few sections, but you know, once those connections are tight, it actually makes no difference at all. Once again, these are proper flared connections with the proper flared coupling. And you know, some people do these kinds of repairs with compression fittings, and that's a big no-no for brake systems. Some people, you know, get away with it for a long time, but it's generally considered dangerous. I've never done it myself, nor do I really know much of anything about compression fittings, so I'm just giving you kind of the general official mechanics recommendation. Don't use compression fittings, use proper flared brake fittings.
And the only other thing worth noting is this fitting you see up here on the on this cross member underneath the fuel tank. Now, as I was routing the new lines here, I actually stripped out that fitting. I wasn't even wrenching on it all that hard. I ended up stripping one of the fittings, so that that three-way T back there, I have a new one on order. Hopefully I'll have it in a few days, and I just have that in place there now just to keep everything together. But like I said, that fitting is stripped on one side and definitely will not hold pressure. So that's where I am. Hopefully tomorrow I can get out here and replace that last section of brake line. You can see here that, sorry about the light, but you can see I also have new rubber lines in on 3 out of 4 corners. So the front passenger brake line will be my next task. And like I said, once the brake lines are in, then I'm going to get back to drive shaft and differential stuff, because I can't finish up the brakes really until the rear end and the CV axles are mounted, because you can see on the other side there the wheel hub, and you cannot seat the axles through the wheel hub with the caliper in place. So basically I'm going to have to wait until I have the rest of the rear end assembled before I finish up the brake system. So this is Mercedes Diesel Guy. Thanks for watching.